and he's giving another presentation on mobile technology, specifically what you guys have been developing.
That's right.
So,
thank you, Angela. Yeah, it's been a bit of an arduous journey. I've spent a lot of time on many airplanes, but it's good to be here in the lovely city of Amsterdam under the careful care of a loving Blender audience. So, Bight Interactive, mobile game development. This is what we do. We are mobile game developers, and we're focusing entirely on 3D because 2D is the way of the past. 2D is phased out. There's no point in doing 2D once 3D has been achieved, and you can only get better after that because there is no real fourth dimension. It's the penultimate, and there's been so much research and so much done leading up to this that now you can put things into phones very quickly. You know, all the tricks of the trade, all the little sprite cheats and everything that you can put in. And so we're in a very good position. So I'll go through the history of mobile 3D quickly. OpenGL-ES was the first implementation. It's the mobile version of OpenGL. I believe they're up to version 1.1 right now, and that was coded primarily in C. There were several proprietary formats which sat on top of that. They were things such as Superscape, the mascot capsule, the hybrid system. They required that phone manufacturers and developers pay to develop for those systems. They performed fairly well, but they operated on fixed point math and were not all that good. So the JSR 184, which was touched on a little bit earlier, was then implemented, which also sits on top of OpenGL-ES, but is a free implementation and doesn't require anyone to pay any licensing costs. And it's quite fast. And so Java is completely portable, although not always in all instances. It's quite easy to code, and it's free to develop with. So all in all, it makes for a very good development environment for mobiles because the turnover is so fast and the attention spans are so short that you need to be very, very flexible, very quick to market. And so coding with Java has many advantages over C because you don't have to worry about different architectures, anything like that. Java, for the most part, will just work. So when we first started our company, it was August of last year, and there was one phone that could do 3D. The lonely K700i from Sony. And so in the months that have passed since then, the numbers have grown, and this is not even an updated list. This is fairly recent, but every major manufacturer is on board. Sony and Nokia have put the biggest push behind mobile 3D, and all their new phones, Nokia is a bit of an exception because some of their older Series 40 phones are not capable of it, but they are fully behind mobile 3D and the Java standard. And so there's been a lot of development, and the early Sonys were very poor performers. And they haven't gotten much better, but they're starting to figure things out. And there's some content that's starting to be developed, and it's really starting to enter the marketplace. And so, on that note, a little bit more about our company. We are Byte Interactive, and we solely do 3D. We've got several titles in the works right now. One of which I'll touch on in a moment. It will be quite familiar to most Blender people. We have finished development of a basketball game as well. It's a show off against your friend type of game. So you play head to head or against the computer, and you can run around on a court. You choose your spot, you jump, you do a couple combos, you try to outflash and outscore your opponent. A simple little match gate ball test, and I believe. I have my slides a little next up. So, Blender. We use Blender for all our 3D development. It's fantastic because it used to fit on a floppy disk. It doesn't anymore, which is unfortunate. But it's very lightweight. It's very purpose-built. It does what it does quite well, and it's a very complete tool set. Everything that you need to do to create a functional 3D scene graph is contained within Blender. You can do all your UV mapping, all your armature control, any kind of fancy modeling and things like that are all contained within the Blender toolset. And most importantly, in some respects, it's also free. And as I mentioned before, being nimble and lightweight and quick to market is one of the most important things. And forking out 10 grand for the new license of Maya / 3D Studio Max is not a good way to go. So, this is how we work with Blender. So a little step-by-step overview. We're dealing entirely with skinned mesh armatures now. We're doing all skeleton characters. But we start off with the basic modeling. Most people will be fairly familiar with this. Setting up the scene with background reference, creating a cube, loop cutting, delete the half, build up your model, merge the two together, and then continue to do your UV mapping and texture assignment. Then our 3D team has created a nice rigging system, so that allows for FK and IK to be done simultaneously. And so there are two skeletons which are used. One skeleton which will be used at export, and then one which is used with IK solvers for easier animation. And they're linked together, and the IK skeleton is baked out to the FK skeleton, which is then optimized via a Python script for export. The animation, basic animation, done using the created rig and all the tools available in Blender. Removing the constraints. So things need to be cleaned up a little bit before export. So this is a little sample, workflow. We start off, some basic sketches, and then you get something a little more detailed, and then you work your way up to the final product. And I will pass around a working mobile version of the Naughty Nurse, the most famous Blender demo in the world. And this is Angela's phone, so please do not steal it. So it's the same basic idea as the regular Naughty Nurse. You can use the joystick to move the camera around. If you press 1, you can spank her, and if you press 3, you can tickle her. And there's a thermometer along the side, and if you can keep her hot, then she'll take her clothes off. But if you make her upset and you do something she doesn't like, she may put her clothes back on, and she doesn't like that. The idea is kind of like a sex Tamagotchi. And so we've obtained the license for this from Randall Rickard, who created the original demo, and so we're working with him to commercialize this product, and that's part of the reason for my trip to Europe, to sell this product. So, while everyone's enjoying that, the function buttons will exit the application. So if you accidentally exit it, you can get back into it, hopefully. Blender 2.4. I don't know if Blender 2.4 has officially been released yet, but we've been working with some of the early builds, and it is very impressive. It's a very important release because it allows for proper real-time IK. And even on poor machines, you can get some really solid results, and the modeling tools and the animation tools have come a long way. Our animation staff has been working with Blender for about a year now, and there have been huge improvements, and they've got nothing but good things to say about the 2.4 release. So hats off to anyone who's involved in that, and I look forward to seeing the final version. It really does demonstrate how much can be changed, and in such an environment as the open source environment, it's important to see that such large changes can be accomplished, and also quite effectively. So, that brings me to our side of this coin, and we create mobile games, and for that we use the BentI development kit. Our mobile technology is called BentI. It's an export and game engine system, which is freely distributed for non-commercial use, but any commercialization would require a deal from us, and we'd work something out. But it's free for hobby use, and it's great for just picking something up, throwing some things together, putting some stuff in your phone and showing your friends. So while Java is very cross-platform, there are a lot of difficulties with Java development, mostly because there's no central standard for the actual operation of Java, only that they implement an actual API. So a method can operate completely differently, but be called the exact same thing. And so it's not as bad with Java, but the M3G is very fractured, and there's a lot of disparity in the implementation of functions. There's a lot of rendering errors that you run into, and I'll touch on that a little later. So the BentI development environment is designed to, with the Apple style in mind, just simply drag and drop a collection of items, build up your game. The Blender game engine environment was used as a bit of a benchmark for the conception of it, because the controller setup and a lot of the simple interface stuff is fairly good in the game engine. So we'll be able to support multiple file formats. We are starting with Blender because it's the easiest to work with. And so there will be a library of algorithms, so you can do all your basic AI that you can just drop in, follow, chase, attack, basic things like that, as well as several widgets for bitmap text, menus, all that kind of stuff. So, and of course, you can also add your own if you need to. So that brings me to the M3G file format, which was touched on a little bit. Thankfully, I don't have to go through the whole thing. And so we've been working on this exporter for a year, a solid year of getting new phones, exporting, trying to figure out what is going on, and rebuilding. Because there are a lot of issues, and we've tracked them all down, and we think we've done a very good job. And there are several issues with achieving exact texturing and also a complete armature system, and we've got it finalized now. So the nurse, when it makes its way around, demonstrates all of that. She's perfectly textured. You can see her face. She even blinks, and that model is an IK export to FK that's been then optimized and exported through via M3G. So, in this year of testing, we've made a very complete exporter. I haven't used the Maya or 3D Studio Max exporter yet, but the word on the street is that it's quite poor, and you have very little control over it. So, we've tried to build in as many features as possible. We make sure that it's compatible with all the major vendors. There are a number of differences, and certain little things like -0, which will completely destroy an M3G. And those are the little things. So performance can also be tuned. Different phones will perform differently. So something like the Motorola E680, which is a Linux-based ARM 400 megahertz cell phone, is blazingly fast and will run at close to 35 frames per second with the nurse. But the Sony, which was demonstrated earlier, would probably be lucky to do 3 or 4. So there's a lot of optimization that can be done, but there's a lot of consideration that needs to be made at the authoring environment as well. And we've cataloged all these differences, and they'll be available through developer support. And we've taken care to minimize the file size as well. Only the absolute necessities go in, and it makes quite a difference. So the core API for the BentI development environment, this is a loose sketch. It's pre-alpha at the moment. We've been finalizing the technology, and we'll be creating a downloadable package within the next month and a half that we can start testing with. But these are some of the basic functions that you'll be able to do, and there will be several that will be added, and this will all be fleshed out. So basically, you're able to create a game by just focusing on the states. You don't have to write the actual application architecture. So the transition between different scenes, loading and unloading of objects, storing of global variables, can all be done with a couple simple method calls through a standardized API. So you define some resources, player one, you say, give me player one, it figures out where it is, figures out whether or not it's been loaded, loads it if it's needed, otherwise it returns it. It takes a lot of the complexity out of the development stream. So a quick overview of the expected workflow. So you would export from the authoring environment, then import into the development environment. You could use as many different formats as you like at that stage and mix them all together. You'd create your controllers, your AI, and such. Do your layout and link all the controllers together, and then export the application, which would create a JAD-JAR combination. This will be completely cross-platform. It operates, it's written in Java, and we've ported the KVM so that it runs on multiple operating systems as well. We're still waiting for some information from Sun, so we cannot preview. There's no full toolkit, but you could do a full compile and put it onto a phone and test that way. So, why Blender? Well, it allows for extreme competitiveness. It allows, it gives you a complete toolkit, a tool set, and it operates very well, and it's completely free. It is ideal for testing and development because of the reasons I just outlined. So the scriptability is a very large issue because there is no file format from Blender, at least, which will export full skeletons and armature data and all the animations. And so we created an extended OBJ format, which does just that. It subscribes to the same ideals, but exports a complete armature, bones, animations, a complete scene graph within a text-readable format, which is a lot nicer when you're doing debugging and trying to write an M3G exporter. What else is here? Yeah. Everything you need. So, why not Blender? Ease of implementation. This is a bit of a sticky issue, I know, but in a commercial environment, animators are not trained to use Blender off the bat. In school, they're brought up using Silo, XSI, Softimage, 3D Studio, Maya, anything but Blender, except in some schools which are now starting to use it. And there are major compatibility issues with the workflow process. Some really small things, like the proper implementation of n-gons has been a major something I hear a lot about. An f-gon, in which case you've already created your faces, and seems to defeat the purpose of having a more than four-sided polygon anyway. So there's a lot of issues like that, and the common line is that, well, if you don't like something, you can change it. But frankly, that's not really the case, because we hire animators and not coders in that department. And while it is true, it's not something to rest upon. If there are major problems, then they should be tackled at the at the core development level. But having said that, the level of input and the amount of change is very good. And I'd like to be more involved in the process and to use our creative staff, because they're not getting away from Blender. They're using it because we're committed to it. It's a fantastic program, and it's got great roots, and it's got a lot of potential. And so we'd like to contribute by having a full commercial environment as a source of feedback. So the other point would be ease of use. The modeling tools, again, if you delete an edge, it will delete the entire face. And I know why that's done mathematically, but every other program will turn that into an n-gon. And you end up having to rebuild a lot of your faces a lot of the time during modeling. And that's been a huge complaint. That's probably one of the number one things on the list. And just some more advanced armature controls, which I know have been implemented in 2.4 pole vectors and things of that nature. Things that someone coming from Maya would be looking for. I believe that's it. No, one more. Yes, the requirement of Python to be used for linking and things of that nature, because animators are not coders, and so to require them to write Python bindings inside the authoring environment, while it does achieve the goal, another solution would be better. And on the topic of Python, something similar to Mel, where when Maya does something, it's exported, it's always a Mel command. So if you were to open a console, as you worked throughout Maya, every single command would show up. And Python has the potential to operate very much like that. And I'm not sure if you're working on it or not, but
Did you see that it's not basically about the events which we have to rewrite?
Right.
We are not sure about the priorities and the need other things.
That's right. Yeah.
If somebody wants to do the we have to fix the sequence and make a composite.
Yeah.
But Orange is setting our priorities now.
Yeah, and Orange seems like it's going to be a fantastic influence on the development, because it is an internal commercial project essentially, and it seems to have created some nice tools already. So I look forward to seeing the results of that. But also some more standardization with Python. I believe remove Bezier was changed to del Bezier, and the API was not updated, and the Python method was not deprecated, and so all of a sudden scripts don't work, and I have no idea why. So just a little bit more care in those types of things are the largest issues. So going forward, beyond 2.4, I would hope to see some of these influences taking hold on Blender, because Blender has fantastic potential, especially with the shrinking of the market with the purchase of Maya by whoever owns 3D Studio. It's now a very tight market, and there's not much room to wiggle around, and so Blender is in a very good position to snatch up some market share there, because it could easily be a very viable commercial tool. So that would be very good. JSR 239 is very exciting. It's direct bindings for OpenGL. The biggest flaw with JSR 184 is that it sits on top of OpenGL, but it abstracts it, so it's not direct method calls. It's doing all software rendering. It's quite terrible, but it does get the job done. So JSR 239 and OpenGL ES 2.0 is coming out with full pixel shaders and a lot of really nice features, and I'll get back to that one in a sec. Hardware acceleration. We've been working with some graphics chipset makers who will remain nameless with pre-release hardware, some black box stuff, and there's a lot of really exciting developments which are coming in the new year, which will see hardware acceleration on mobile phones and a drastic increase in performance. Brew and C++ will eventually probably be supported by the BentI development kit as well, because there is a very large CDMA market as well, and there's no reason to exclude it simply because it uses awkward brew. So, mobile phones, fantastic opportunity. I wouldn't be in any other business, frankly, at this point, especially having come to Europe. I've been in Canada for a little while now, and they don't really get it there. But Europe is such a hub of communication and entertainment. It's quite exciting, and there's mobile phones everywhere, and they're always changing, and they're changing the way people behave. So we're contributing Python scripts. We've got a couple IPO optimization scripts that can be used so that you don't have so much animation data with baked IPOs. Just simple peak and trough stuff at the moment, which works quite well. The Naughty Nurse demo is all just peak and trough export, and the feet don't shiver around. They're quite solid. So some 3D formats, the EOBJ file that I mentioned, the format. The BentI development environment is free as well. And if there was to be such a thing, we would be interested in pursuing some mobile-specific branches for Blender. There's a lot of opportunity there because the Sun is discontinuing support for Linux with the wireless toolkit with 2.3 coming out soon. And so it'll be a Windows-only option, which quite frankly is no good. So our environment will be completely cross-platform, and Blender is also built to be like that, and so there's definitely some potential integration that we could do. So requests from you. There's a lot of people and a lot of creative minds, a lot of hardworking people out there, and so if possible, we would like some beta testers. And we're going to have a release in the next couple months, and we need people who just play around with Blender, people who can try to break it, because it needs to be a very robust tool, and there's a lot of fun things you can do, and it's good to pass it off to a community when it's been such a tightly held child for so long, and see how it matures, see what kind of applications result. So hobbyist or professional game developers, we've got existing distribution channels which we can use to leverage the distribution of any content that you create with our kit. And so that's what we would like from you. And like the clever fellow that I am, I did not put our website address in this presentation. But many strengths. I'm way over time, so I'm just going to skip this. Bight, BIGHT.ca is our website. You can go there. It's going to be changing a fair bit in the next while. We're going through a couple launches, as well as our game portal, which will be up soon as well. And info@byte.ca for any general things. And other than that, thank you for your time.